Jacob, Gemma and Hannah. Over to you.
How do we present?
Yeah. Sorry, it's Steve Wright, not Jacob.
Sorry, Steve.
I can pretend to be Jacob
But also
today.
fair enough.
I'm sorry, Steve.
It's okay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, so let's start with our why. Let's talk about how we can save lives in our neighbourhoods with safe speed limits. To save lives in our neighbourhoods, we need Christchurch to have a safe transport system that is designed for people. We're all human and we all make mistakes, so we can't always stop crashes occurring, but we can change the outcomes of crashes. Te Ara Ki Te Ora Road to Zero is New Zealand's road safety strategy, and Christchurch City Council has signed up to this. Road to Zero adopts the safe system approach and has 4 key principles. We're human, so we need to plan for mistakes and design for human vulnerability. We have a shared responsibility, and we need to strengthen all parts of the system. This means doing our part to reduce fatal and serious crashes on streets and in our neighbourhoods of Christchurch. As a road controlling authority, the Council can control some parts of the system, such as safe speeds, safer infrastructure and education to reduce trauma on our streets. Other parts of the system, such as enforcement, are led by our partner organisations, the police and Waka Kotahi. Today we're here to talk about Safe Speed Neighbourhood Proposal for Speed Management. The science behind speed management is all about survivability. We know that regardless of what caused the crash, the speed at which they are travelling almost always determines if those involved walk away unharmed or not. Setting safe speed limits will result in a number of benefits that allow Council to deliver across many strategic goals: reducing the number of people seriously injured or killed on our roads, providing for safer walking, cycling or scooting trips to and from school for children and their families, providing more choice for people travelling around their neighbourhood, providing more people with low-cost options for moving around, creating a more inclusive transport network, and enabling people to make healthier choices that we can create a healthier environment with lower carbon emissions and improved air quality. Speed management isn't new for Christchurch. We've done it before. Our Safe Speed Neighbourhoods proposal is focused on reducing speed limits through simply changing signs in neighbourhoods and around schools across the city. We will monitor following implementation and deliver targeted infrastructure where it is required. This is an efficient and effective way to reducing trauma on our streets, backed by international evidence and local examples. A study found that every 10 kilometre posted speed limit change, we typically observe a 2 to 3 kilometre change in mean speeds. So reducing from 50 to 30, we could expect a drop of 4 to 6 kilometres in the mean speed of vehicles on those streets. Waka Kotahi controversially cut speeds on State Highway between Blenheim and Nelson in December 2020. Since then, no one has died, and the serious injuries has been significantly reduced, even when factoring for reduced travel during COVID lockdowns. Auckland Transport undertook a study on their first phase of safe speed limits after they had been in place for 2 years. In the areas covered by the lower speed limits, road deaths have fallen by 30%. In Christchurch in 2016, we introduced a 30-kilometre zone within the central city core. Since the introduction, the number of crashes resulting in death or serious injury has also reduced. In the 2-year period from 2020 to 2021, there were 60% fewer serious crashes than there had been in the 2-year period from 2014 to 15, prior to the lower speed limits being introduced. One of the quickest and most effective ways to reduce trauma on our roads is to reduce speeds to make them survivable. Survivable speeds are speeds at which a person walking or cycling is likely to survive on direct impact crash. The International Transport Forum report on speed and crash risks suggests that the most unprotected road users survive if hit by a vehicle at up to 30 kilometres an hour. So as you can see in the graphic, if you are directly hit by a vehicle travelling at 30, the probability of death is around 10%. If you are hit directly at 40, the probability jumps to 32%, and if directly hit at 50, the probability of death goes up to 80%. The risk of vulnerable pedestrians, such as the elderly and young children, are higher again. We're not talking about reckless speeders. This is about everyday normal people doing the right thing and who simply make a mistake. Low-level speeding, for example, only 5 to 10 kilometres over the speed limit, is the main contributor to road trauma because it is much more common. We've all done it at some point. One of the key actions in the Road to Zero strategy is to set safe speed limits around schools by the end of 2027, with an interim target of 40% of schools by June 2024. All the schools in Christchurch are classed as Category 1, and therefore will have 30-kilometre speed limits to reduce the risk to tamariki and whānau of being killed or seriously injured while travelling to and from school. Speed affects the crashes as well as the crash severity. This is a consequence of the laws of physics that has been supported by evidence from all over the world. As a rule of thumb, a 1% change in mean speed results in approximately 2% change in injury crash frequency, 3% change in severe crash frequency, and 4% change in fatal crash frequency on that street. As mean speed increases, there is an increased risk of crash involvement resulting from factors such as stopping distance, less ability to spot and react to hazards, the chance of other road users misjudging how fast someone is travelling, and the probability of a rear-end crash if the driver has not accounted for the increased speed by increasing their following distance. So what is the trauma on our streets in Christchurch with our current speed limits? To answer this, we reviewed Waka Kotahi's crash analysis system. In New Zealand, this system is the main source of capturing data on road trauma via traffic crash reports from the police. While CAS is an excellent tool by international standards, it does have limitations, and underreporting is one of them. For example, research undertaken found that only 54% of motor vehicle injury crashes found in New Zealand hospital data could also be found in CAS, and only 22% of bicycle injury crashes. The study found considerable underreporting across all vulnerable transport user modes compared with CAS reported numbers, with typically 6 to 8 times as many serious injuries being reported in hospitals versus those being reported in CAS. A recent study for Auckland Transport found that while serious pedestrian injuries in CAS were about 90 per year, hospital data records showed that more than 700 pedestrian injuries a year on their street network. However, the statistics are also likely to underreport how speed is contributing to crashes. Too fast for the conditions is determined by police officers on site and can be subjective, particularly for serious and minor injury crashes. In the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2022, we had 14 pedestrians die and 243 serious crashes involving pedestrians. For people riding bicycles, we've had 19 people lose their life and 283 crashes resulting in serious injury over the same 10-year period. If the underreporting of serious injuries is considered, actual serious crashes could be in the order of 3,000 to 4,000, or roughly one every day on average in the 10-year period. We are still working through the causation factors of the crashes to understand the themes. With some fatals, the causes are still being investigated or they're with the coroner, and the details aren't yet available.
So the message that we had in the community was we're making it safer around all schools and surrounding neighbourhoods. Whether you're visiting whānau and friends, letting tamariki walk, scooter or bike to school, or driving to work and home again, you should be able to do it safely. We touched on this on Tuesday, but I just wanted to reiterate where this fits in. So we were doing a piecemeal approach to speed changes in Christchurch, and we still had funding to do 5 more slow speed neighbourhoods. And then the Ministry of Transport introduced the setting of speed limits rule, allowing us to set speeds more efficiently by enabling a network approach rather than the piecemeal approaches we'd undertaken in the past. The rule also stated that 40% of schools needed to have safe and appropriate speeds outside of them by 2024. The combination of these school zones plus the neighbourhood zones already in our body of work became the Safe Speed Neighbourhoods proposal.
So what did we consult on? Generally, schools and neighbourhoods made up the bulk of the Safe Speed Neighbourhoods proposal. However, a few extra areas were being considered. These are implementing the approved speed limit changes associated with the Christchurch Regeneration Acceleration Fund. This creates efficiency and helps tell the bigger picture to the public. So this included the areas of Richmond, Linwood, Woolston, and Sydenham, Summerfield, Waltham, and Beckenham. We also found an opportunity to create efficiency in our process around subdivisions, designing them and signing them as per the safe and appropriate speed in the recently released Speed Management Guide will mitigate the need for council to then go in and change these retrospectively. Further, additional rural roads were included, although they weren't the primary target of this plan. Banks Peninsula has been through quite a journey with their speed limits, and this was an opportunity to just finish off those that hadn't been addressed previously. It's also important to discuss what we didn't consider in this plan, and that was the wider CBD. So the schools in Central City were being considered, but not the rest, and that will be considered as part of the full speed management plan. Also, neighbourhoods that weren't included in this round of consultation will also again be included in the next speed management plan. And lastly, roads designated as urban connectors and arterials and areas where land use is primary industrial haven't been addressed. These will also be considered in the speed management plan. Just because they haven't been looked at yet, it doesn't mean to say they won't be looked at in future.
Right, after deliberating on how to make these recommendations meaningful in a citywide, but also a very specific street scale, we decided on an interactive map that could be commented on. This map was only accessible through the project page, which provided extensive information on the why. At the start of consultation, we released a newsline story, sponsored story, emails to all schools, principals and other identified stakeholders, lots of social media posts, advertising in newspapers, bus shelters, on social media and Google Ads. And during consultation, this map was viewed more than 25,000 times. Mid-consultation, we realised that we were getting some really strong feedback within certain areas. This was mostly to reduce speeds from 40 to 30 or to extend zones without current proposals. In response to this feedback, we extended the consultation period and added to the proposal in a few of those areas with strong feedback. This proactive change allowed us to listen to the community and provide better quality information for you to make decisions on. These zones included Sydenham, Spraydon, Linwood, Woolston, Bromley, Kennedys Bush, Beckenham and Vinwa. While our initial advertising was citywide, we targeted this additional stage more by dropping flyers at all affected households, recognising that some people may have gone online in the initial launch and either been okay with the proposal or thought it didn't apply to them. This new messaging emphasised that there had been a mid-consultation change. So what did we hear? 2008 comments were made by at least 1,139 unique businesses, organisations and individuals, mostly on the map, but I also received 150 odd email submissions. During this, 24% clearly stated their support for the changes, 11% their opposition, and the remaining 66% were either observations or specific requests. We were really clear on what was support and opposition. I didn't want to assume it was when people explicitly said so. These specific requests made up a lot of the feedback that we heard. You can see there zone extensions. We had 584 requests for that. Also notable ones, 509 requests for traffic calming measures. We wanted to quickly touch on some of the key themes discussed by submitters. 357 commented on the plan making streets safer, while 26 said that the streets would become less safe, typically citing driver frustration or attention. Gemma obviously touched on the why of the plan, which is saving lives in our community all around safety, and we aren't aware of any evidence to indicate that slower speeds would make the streets less safe. We can touch on more of these, but just conscious of time, I'll highlight some key ones. 73 comments were on the speeds bringing a lack of consistency to the roading network. We recognise that because this was schools and selected neighbourhood zones, it could look a little bitsy at this point, but we've done our best to connect up zones and propose speeds to be as consistent as possible. As part of the implementation of the draft full speed management plan, which you were briefed on Tuesday, we expect all streets to become intuitive and consistent as well as safe. So there were some suggested, as usual, we listened to consultation feedback and made some changes in areas such as Burwood and Queen's Park, Avonhead, Bexley and Hallsville. There was substantial feedback requesting speeds lower than our initial proposal, so this is now what we're recommending to you. There were also areas where we had recommended zone extensions, including Redcliffs Village, Heathcote Valley, some streets in Redwood, and streets around the Cashmere Dyers, Centurus, Colombo intersection. All newly affected residents received a letter informing them of the proposal and requesting feedback, and this feedback will be provided to you before making a decision. Other high demand areas such as New Brighton, Heathcote have been noted and will be prioritised for future speed changes. And if new zones are recommended, so if after hearing people who wish to be heard, you would like us to investigate extending a zone or including other streets, you've got a couple of options. The first is letters out to residents now. Feedback will be collected before a delayed decision. Or councillors recommend that certain neighbourhoods be prioritised in the draft speed management plan for implementation. That's recommended by us so that it can be wrapped around, we can do some why messaging to wrap around it, which typically would be a better experience for residents, but up to you. Any questions?
Very much. Because we were delayed starting, and I don't want to keep submitters waiting, we really don't have time for any questions, but we do have a briefing on this after the hearings have finished, the next round of hearings, that we can ask questions then. Okay.
Yeah, so it was because you have made some changes. The link that we've got takes us to the original pinpoint map, but doesn't show any changes made, any extensions, or so like how do we find out where you're recommending the extensions? So just so we can check that as people are submitting.
That's on the PDF maps that are in the big tin can.
Okay, they're not in the hearings panel page.
Okay.
We will figure that out and let you know once they're here, because they should be.
Yeah, because we knew we were getting them, I just couldn't find.
Yeah.
But really tiny. Tiny.
Yep. My question is also in relation to those zones that have been slightly extended. I've had some queries from the public about whether they will have an opportunity to be heard on their submissions like the wider consultation submitters have. And I see that we've got our schedules for today and for the 2nd. Is there room then for those who are providing feedback with their deadline on the 28th of May, which is in the weekend, that they can be heard?
Yes, so those were the residents that we sent letters out to post-consultation. They were neighbourhoods that we perceived there to be adequate support for making changes to. Once we get all of the feedback collated, that may not be our recommendation, and we'd communicate that with the residents, and at that point offer them the opportunity. If they would like to be heard, would make it happen.
Would that be at the next round of our hearings then, next week? Would you do another one? So you may extend it. Okay, thank you very much. That's really good. Okay, so we will start our... Sorry? Okay, where do we send questions to? Anne Fitzgerald. Sorry, Andre. Okay.
I couldn't hear.
So, welcome, Callum.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa.